Most are afraid of unknown depths, skirting shores thinking world flat. I'm with the island girls in celebration of new religion. Nobody led me or said this way. I sailed alone on makeshift raft with wind as companion. Fate for deliverance, confidence enough to assess new disposition. Seekers of lost paradise may seem fools to those who never sought the other worlds. Welcome to Momentary Zen with Zen Garcia. Visit www.fallenangels.tv. You're listening to Revolution Radio.
The grand deception as matrix is all-encompassing, broad-reaching, veiled in the subtlety of finite machination, so covert in imposition. All those born into its nurturance are raised unknowingly, incarcerated by its deviant proposition. One was never even granted choice or opinion, which could assert deviation from its programmed assimilation. Parents, grandparents, ensure loved ones are fostered in compliance. Children make swift accord, resonating with sentence which postures them for role as good worker bee, taxpayer, and soldier ant, absolutely ready to surrender life for benefit of queen and hive. So few of the farwalkers can even grasp the dialectic fashioned as prison by the overseers. So few, even those privileged with instruction and advantage, are lost to resolution, which, connecting all dots, grants one insight into the revelation which unlocks all portal, illuminating the secrets of all life, effort, and being. Contrary to belief, such knowledge cannot be passed on from parent to child, adept to initiate, teacher to student. Such ministry can only be taught by the wind, sun, moon, stars, and angels of the Most High. Few written instructions on such knowing or how to achieve such reward. Most hold no concern with such attainment, as the reward of which remains shrouded, riddled by the pursuit. Welcome, friends. I'm your host, Zen Garcia. This is Momentary Zen, and we're streaming here out of or near Athens, Georgia, East Coast, United States of America. And I hope that wherever you are blessed with New Year, and that you are finding joy and peace and comfort, satisfaction with the coming new opportunity of new day. And I don't know if you are experiencing what seems to be the polar vortex that is coming down, or the Arctic breeze, if that's what they say. But it is cold. It's like 14 degrees outside here, and we usually average between like 50 and 40, maybe down to the 30s sometimes. But last year was kind of brutal, and I know a lot of you have experienced the same. And so I hope that you're somewhere safe, and that you're warm, and that your loved ones, your family members, are also inside and that, you're huddled around a fire or in some way staying warm. And I pray for all the homeless out there that may be having to endure the onslaught of this freeze. I hope that they find place of refuge somewhere where they can at least shelter for night. And if they have to, go out for well, I'm sure it's still going to be cold tomorrow day, but hopefully they'll find place of refuge for at least a few nights, 3 or 4 nights. And for those that have a hard time even with warming your house or taking care of yourselves as far as the heat, bundle up if you can, because it's brutal. And definitely try to drain, to leave the water dripping as far as your pipes, so you don't have to deal with that kind of a situation either. But and so tonight I'm going to talk about a little bit about some of the things that I'm involved in as far as the decipherment of this text called the Book of Atam and Eua, which is a Thracian text. And we're also going to be speaking somewhat about the Thracians to kind of, because I know when I first heard about or was sent this particular text by one of my listeners, a friend named Alexander. He's a longtime listener of the shows that I've been doing on Blog Talk and the videos that I've released also on YouTube under Endeavor Freedom. But he contacted me and asked me to look over this one particular text that he had translated from Bulgarian into English. And because English was not his predominant language, he wasn't sure as to the translation he had made and whether it would be readable and understandable by those that would read it if they were, from an English-speaking country, which was the target audience for what would be the release of this information. And I'll also share some of that with you as well. Welcome all of you that are in the chat room. There are a lot of people here this evening. I'm guessing that many of you have some time off, and that or maybe it's just too cold for you to go out and do anything else but to listen to some of the shows here on Revolution Radio. But there are quite a number of individuals in the chat room, and so welcome all of you. And for those of you that are our usual listeners, those that do follow my show as well as the others that are on near and around the time that I come on, we appreciate you, and I wish that all of you are blessed in all the things that you may be doing. But anyways, as far as the Thracians, I had never heard of them myself, and I did not know about how ancient was their culture and their civilization, and also the artifacts and the remnants of the things that they have left from they precede the Greeks and the Sumerians by 2 millennia, and that some of the texts which have been translated have only been done so recently, and that most archaeologists and scientists and people that buy into, welcome Quartet, and Vibes and Wild Bob and Monty Dean and Patrick English and Hal and Wild Feather and I mean, there's a lot of people in the chat room. And so, but anyways, welcome all of you. And so we're going to talk a little bit about, the scientists that buy into the whole uh, premise that ancient man, and especially those that preceded Adam, the pre-Adamic ages, that these particular beings were primitive and had no advanced technology or capacity to build lasting structure. And then yet you have all these megalithic sites and structures worldwide that totally go against and are contrary to such belief systems, and how they get away with teaching these things in colleges and universities and to even high school kids is beyond me. Well, we know why they do it, and that they're basically trying to enculturate everybody into a belief system that separates them from God and from any belief in anything of a supernatural capacity or anything that is against or goes against that we evolved from monkeys somehow, and that there's some missing link out there in the world that unites ape and man along the evolutionary ladder, and that we started from this place of being a simple creature to now being this advanced being, which in what I've learned in this research that I've done, the things that I've learned and studied on, in which all the new information, the artifacts and the cities and things that are being discovered by archaeologists worldwide supports the premise that I put forth in my sixth book, Sons of God, Who We Are and Why We're Here, is that we are actually at the low point of so-called civilization and technological advancement, and those things that were done in our ancient past far surpassed in ability and capacity the things that we are doing now, and that really humanity is recreating things that were done long ago, and that the times before modern humanity and even before pre-Adamic humanity, when the gods ruled, the time called the Zep Tepe, the first times, or what I refer to as being the prior times, that also what Mantheo and Berosus speak about as being the reign of the gods, which we know these gods to be the fallen angels, or gods with a little g. But anyways, that these beings preceded us, and that they were here before we were, as far as modern humanity, and that when they arrived, there was a humanoid being upon the planet, but that this particular individual was much like what we refer to as a Bigfoot or Sasquatch or Yeti or the wild man, and that the Sumerian text described this individual as such, and that it was this particular being that they had manipulated to try to create a slave race so long ago, and that they used this being as menial labor to perform simple tasks because it was not yet advanced, such as modern humanity did not even have language or a writing system or had the capacity to problem solve or think, or not saying that the Bigfoot or the pre-Adamic humans were simple They weren't, but the capacities that we have are far beyond what they were able to do, even with the genetic manipulation and uh, the hybrid crossbreeding with the the so-called gods or these fallen angels, and that even with the cone-headed, the elongated skull people, that they were part of the hybrid, um, that there was a different mix or a group of people here during our ancient times, and that rather than we see just a straight linear progression as far as the evolution of ape man or caveman to what we see as modern humanity, that there were many such creatures or beings, humanoid type individuals here all at the same time. And that this includes giants, hobbits, dwarves, mixed creatures, all different, Neanderthal, Cro-Magnon, this other breed, it's a new species, a humanoid called the Denisovans. I guess I'm saying it right. I don't know or not, but there was even just recently an article, and I'm going to post this in the chat room, that talks about how these Denisovians, how they had mixed with some group of humanoid or some unnatural or supernatural being, and that the result is that they had strange and anomalous DNA found in their genetic code. And the Sumerian text speaks about all these different experimentations and manipulations that they went through in order to evolve this so-called primitive worker. And then this is before the appearance of modern humanity, which modern humanity just showed up on the scene. They don't know, how or where this particular being came from, and that this particular being had just godlike ability and capacity, even with like the appearance, the sudden appearance of the hyoid bone, which gave us the ability to articulate language in so many different ways, and to speak and to also be understood, and how they call this particular being the civilized man. But anyways, and so the ancient past is interesting, to say the least. That's funny, Gyro. He said, what was the species called? Ellen DeGeneres. That's pretty funny. But anyways, so what we don't know about our lost and forgotten history, and those things which preceded and what became mythology, is intriguing, to say the least, because so much of what was unknown and what had largely been forgotten and veiled is coming to the light with the broad reach of the internet and its capacity to bring information from the most diverse and little known populations of people worldwide, and to bring that to each one of us in the safety and the comfort of our living rooms or our bedrooms or wherever it is that you may be, as far as surfing the internet through a computer, or now even with handheld device, with phones and iPads and notebooks and things of that nature. And so this is a very interesting time that we live in, and that those things which are coming to light are certainly challenging the accepted belief systems of scientists worldwide that have bought into this evolutionary lie and that have their whole PhD and their paperback degrees based on premises and doctorates which are written about and try to reinforce this, well, these theories, which are nothing more than lies. And so, anyways, we're going to talk about some of this stuff. And also, what is interesting about the things that we're going to get into as far as the knowledge of the Thracians and some of the new information that has come to light, because it was already widely accepted that the Thracian culture and civilization and people, that they were the oldest Europeans and post-flood Europeans, and that that their culture just came out of the blue, and that it immediately had a high degree as far as advancement in many different areas. They are also the oldest now deciphered written language. And this decipherment didn't even take place not long ago. And so scientists, basically challenged and had taught that they were primitive peoples. And I'm also going to post a link to a video for those that are interested in this particular topic, which, if you are not now, if you listen to the rest of the show, I'm sure you will be, because I absolutely am interested in the topic now since I received this information. But this video on YouTube will show you how much of their, of these huge mound complexes and temple complexes and pyramid structures, even like with the Bosnian pyramids, which are now recognized as being the oldest and the largest, and that they even are surpass in age and also height the pyramids in Egypt, which we know to be at least 12,000 years old, and that there's 80% of this particular culture, the Thracians, that the European countries where a lot of these remains are found in have yet to even be to be excavated, and that there's no archaeological precedence to do so. Whether they're, the funding is just not available, or the countries do not recognize the historical importance of these artifacts and relics, not to mention the priceless, the value of these artifacts, because there's a lot of gold artifacts that have been discovered in these Thracian digs, but that nothing is being done. It's only recent that some of the hello vibes, it's all good, brother. But it's only recent that they've even had interest and money to fund the excavations of this Bosnian pyramid. And so a lot of this stuff is just sitting there idle and waiting for somebody with money and interest to perform excavating these numerous sites. And I know if I was a millionaire or billionaire or somebody that had a lot of money, I would absolutely put money towards this kind of a project, because there are untold riches in just incredible amounts of just sitting there in the ground waiting to be discovered. And you'll even see, if you watch this particular video, the individual that is narrating and speaking about the Thracians, he goes to one of these countries, I believe it's Romania, and he shows just huge complexes of these tall mound and pyramid like structures that are buried under the earth, that are just sitting out in these huge tracts of empty land, and that there's nothing around them, no peoples, no villages, nothing, and they're just sitting there idle. I guess it would be much like what America looked like when the pioneers first arrived here. Because I'm not sure if you're familiar with the prehistory of the Americas, but when the pioneers and the all the Europeans that came to this country settled in and began to start farming the land, there were thousands, even tens of thousands, maybe even hundreds of thousands of these huge mound structures found all over the country. And when they dug into them, they found all of these different giant bones and skeletons and weaponry and these texts. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back, everybody. I want to share a comment that Willpower put in the chat room. He said, the Thracian artifacts haven't been released into the public yet because the Jesuits haven't finished sifting through them all yet. And I would be in agreement with Willpower's commentary. And the reason I say so is because anything that goes against evolution and the things that I had remarked about in the first part of the program, they disappear so much of the artifacts that are absolutely priceless and which are contrary to the whole premise that they put forth and are teaching even in university, in the different universities worldwide. And how even like with the giants, and how the Smithsonian, which is the largest institution here in the United States, has been sent thousands, probably hundreds of thousands of items, artifacts, which people that were sending them, believing that they would be displayed and shown to the American public, and that they would be just awestruck by the things that were found here in this country, that most of that has been disappeared. And the only things that have not been eradicated and dissipated in such way are those that people did not send to the Smithsonian institutions. And thank God for that, because everything that they did send there, suddenly got lost somehow. Either they claim on the way or when they were shipping it back. And we know that all of that is bogus, and that these are just lies put forward as excuse in order for them to be able to hide the things that they are trying to hide. And there was even an article that just came out accusing the Rockefeller Museum of hiding artifacts which were discovered in this individual's house, which he was during the 1920s, I forgot his name. I read a story about him in the last show that I did talking about some of the artifacts that show an interaction or an interdiction by the fallen angels into the affairs of humanity, and how that some of these artifacts were probably even built by them, and that they showed just a high degree of ability at a time when, supposedly we were hunterers and gatherers, and humanity was primitive to the point where there's no way we could have created such artifacts, and that there's a lot of these kind of things, and that these kind of things are also prized by the countries of the world that are trying to recreate some of these technologies, or to gain access to some of these olden texts that speak about um, the things that were accomplished by the ancients. And when I speak about the ancients, I'm talking about the rebel angels and the prior times when the so-called gods with the little g reigned here upon the earth. And even like with the Veda texts and the Hindu texts that speak about the technologies that they had, and that even when Oppenheimer was asked about the use of an atomic bomb, that he spoke about how this was the first new such device to have been exploded, but that he remarked about how the ancients had also similar technologies, and how there were many old cities that were vitrified in such way that only an atomic blast could have resulted in in such remaining, as far as the glass and the how it was that they turned sand into glass, that only such a nuclear blast has that capacity to to do something like that, which is just one of the verifications as to this technology existing long ago. And that it says in the Bible, there's nothing new under the sun. There are, that what was will be, those kind of things. And actually, I'll look up a couple passages on the next break and read them to you. But I want to go ahead and get into uh, this the article. But first, let me explain how I was introduced to the Thracians and why it is that I decided to bring this information to light tonight. I had spoke about how a friend of mine, a listener, an old-time listener, Alexander Kwanzik, he contacted me from Bulgaria, wanted me to look into this text that was recently translated from the Thracian into, he translated from Bulgarian into English, and he wanted to make it available to the world, but he wanted my help um, in making it read right for a predominantly English speaking audience. And I'm actually in the process of doing all that. But anyways, the the text that he sent me is called the Book of Atam and Eua, and it dates back to like 5500 BC. And the interesting thing about this particular text, which it was written by a Thracian priest king named Orpheus or Orfei I the first, and that based on his writings, um, a king named Sitalkes, which I'll read a paragraph about all this afterwards, brought it to light and put it to, wrote it into this particular text that was translated by a Dr. Stephen Guide, who became the person, and not even long ago, I think it was like 2006, that was able to crack the code and to decipher the Thracian script. And so the article that I'm going to read from um, is talking a little bit about this. It will also give you some background as to who the Thracians are and to the, how the science community treats these particular people. And also, it will give some historical precedents from some of these Greek historians as to um, passages which relate and which talk about the Thracians as a people. All right. Let me go ahead and post a link to this article in the chat room for those of you that would like to follow along. Or if I miss something, or because I probably won't read the whole thing, you can have it and you can read it for yourself. All right. It says this. The Thracian religion was centered around life, death, and fertility. The Slavs were Nordic and obsessed with the sun and the moon. The Thracians were great warriors with independent tribes, and while the Slavonic culture was agriculture and conservative. The Thracians brought us kukri traditions and Baba Marta. The Slavs gave us the traditional circular Bulgarian folk dances and the lucky number 3. Without knowing it, these centuries-old civilizations worked together to create a modern culture for their descendants. Today, Bulgarians consider both the Slavs and the Thracians to be their ancestors, but the more primitive Thracians, that's what they'd like us to believe. The primitive Thracians were here first. Their artifacts dominate the archaeological headlines, and you'll find handmade souvenirs depicting their heroes, horsemen, and chariots. Most foreigners in Bulgaria have viewed a Thracian treasure or read about these tribes which spread across the Balkan during the 4th and 5th centuries BC. Spartacus, the gladiator slave who's led a rebel war against the Romans, was a Thracian. Homer mentions the Thracian in the Iliad, calling them the people who reminded him of the gods. Herodotus, an historian who lived during the 5th century BC and gave the Greek word history its modern meaning, called the Thracians the most numerous ethnic group, second only to the Hindus. Yet despite this trivia, due to their independent tribes and failure to achieve a unified national consciousness, the Thracians have a mysterious and hollow history. The Bulgarian Academy of Sciences, a professor and archaeologist, have conducted a myriad of meticulous digs across the decades, but while they have uncovered ceramic artifacts, masks, and a cache of over 15,000 gold Thracian pieces, and controversial archaeologist Georgy Kitov has unearthed a bronze head, a tomb, a sarcophagus, and many other pieces, they have overturned no evidence of a Thracian alphabet or a written form of communication. Nothing to help us understand their culture or to indicate that their society was anything but primitive. Hence, when archaeologists exploring the remnants of a Bronze Age fortress in Perikon in southern Bulgaria discovered ancient carved tablets a few decades ago, they were hoping for but not expecting anything new. At this time, the Bulgarian Academy of Sciences did what academics did: examined, handled with care, whispered to each other, even after they searched for a repetitive pattern which can scientifically prove a language or at least a form of communication. They found the tablets to be only, quote, decorative pentanduris, end quote, and they were displayed with the rest. In fact, when other experts contradicted their conclusions, claiming that the tablets from Gradishnita and Karanova were of Thracian origin, these dissenters were indiscreetly hushed or vehemently attacked. Prominent Professor Ganacho Sinavov even had his doctoral thesis rejected due to such claims. But we all know that the Bulgarian soil, whatever its origin, was built with political layers. Through the communist lens, there is a strong historical association with Russia and their collection of tribes. And many believe that the Russians, not the Thracians, deserve such ancestral honor. After all, if you want to know who the Bulgarian adore, just take a walk in any Sofia park. Over the past few years, these same Bronze Age tablets were revisited by Bulgarian-born Dr. Stephen Guide of the Institute for Transcendental Studies in Long Beach, California, an expert in linguistics, cryptography, and transcendental analysis. He has taken the ancient tables and compared them side by side to hieroglyphic texts identifying each alleged primordial decorative pentandera as a meaningful symbol. And while the Thracian drawings are much less developed than Egyptian hieroglyphics, there is no stretch of the imagination needed to see the obvious similarity between them. By making simple translations, some of which included the terms Thracia and territory of Thracia, Dr. Guide makes a hypothesis that these carvings indicate an actual Thracian script. All right, continuing. This means, quote, this means that the earliest written form of communication known to mankind, the dawn of human civilization, Guide urged with obvious passion, originated here 7 millennia before Christ in what is now Bulgaria, preceding the Sumerian and Egyptian hieroglyphics by nearly 2 millennia. In light of compelling similarities between the hieroglyphics and the Thracian symbols, Guide further claims that the Egyptian civilization, which is known to have developed not in Egypt but in an unidentified region to the north, actually created their hieroglyphic system from this archaic Thracian script. Quote, a dramatic shift of our modern understanding of the ancient world is underway, says Dr. Guide. Here's why. In academic terms, historic means a time when a civilized form of writing or historic record can be found. Archaeologists and historians have always classified the 4th and 5th millennium BC as the prehistoric era, since no historical record had been found. If the Thracians did have their own written form of communication, this shifts the established boundaries of the prehistoric era to at least a couple millennia earlier in the linear time. Prehistoric becomes historic, and this monumental shift, if true, is leaving confusion and wide eyes in its path. It's not surprising that such an earth-shattering shift has raised questions, eyebrows, and voices from the Bulgarian Academy of Sciences. It's natural to question a claim that not only contradicts a major tenet of Thracian history, but disrupts long-held beliefs about the beginning of civilized written communication. Thus far, the BAS has provided little support for Guide's findings and do not agree that a Thracian script exists. Archaeologist Georgy Kitov has gone public with his denial, insisting that the Thracian script be outlawed. Be outlawed. Oh my gosh, that's ridiculous. If such symbols contain a Thracian script, why haven't we found more evidence? How do we know these artifacts weren't simply relocated to Bulgaria from Egypt as a result of trade or other cultural exchanges? But Guide addresses these questions in his book, The Thracian Script Decoded, which I've got a copy of it, and it's truly fascinating, and I'm actually going to read just a bit from it here in a short bit. According to ancient Orphic traditions, text indicates that the primitive peoples often worshipped their tablets as living beings of divine nature, reckoning it blasphemous to use these sacred signs in the profane and mundane way in which we currently think of drawing today. He also provides detailed comparisons between the scripts and the ancient Egyptian texts, carefully demonstrating both distinct similarities and subtle but fundamental differences. He insists that the ideas and thought patterns from the Thracian script reveal more archaic and primordial concepts than their later Egyptian counterparts and suggest a process of gradual, typical Egyptian remodeling and cultural assimilation, meaning that the Egyptian hieroglyphics are based upon the Thracian texts. All right, just a couple more paragraphs. While the Carnova tablet is on display here at Sofia's Archaeological Museum, the Gradishnita tablet is being kept at the Varasta Original Museum. Rakinsky, a professional historian and director there, is providing complete access to other artifacts of the same time period and welcomes Guide and his team. He does so in opposition to the Bulgarian Academy of Sciences. Good for him. This breakthrough, unlike the sensational gold artifacts archaeologists often pull from the earth, is about what's beneath yet another surface. It's about discovering the truth. It's about the very first civilization known to man. And this information has the potential to alter the way we consider the cavemen of this country. But to find, you must dig. Peruse the 50-page English summary of Guide's book, The Thracian Script Decoded. Visit the museums and view the tablets yourself, as Guide quotes from Ecclesiastes, "For as the eye of one is able to perceive, so is that person altogether." All right, I'm gonna post a link to this particular text for those that might be interested. If you want to look into it for yourself, it's absolutely fascinating. You can actually download the PDF copy of this text from this link and read it for yourself. And I'm actually going to read an excerpt from it here in just a few minutes. All right. Posting it in the chat room. All right, so let me just re-summarize this. Basically, what Dr. Stephen Guide has been talking about is that the Thracians were, which they preceded. We'll be right back for second hour. All right, welcome back, everybody, for second hour. I'm your host, Zen Garcia. This is Momentary Zen, and this evening we are covering the Thracians as a ancient culture and civilization, and it has now been determined that their script, their language, is the oldest post-flood, which we know most of everything else was wiped out, and that there are cultures and cities and megalithic sites on the bottom of the oceans, several hundreds and even feet and miles down, which means that, you know, there were very high periods of advancement and building going on at a very early age, going back thousands and thousands of years, even preceding the legends of Atlantis, which we know that, according to Plato, that Atlantis, the final destruction, was the advent of the global ice age 12 to 13,000 years ago, and that there are other stories, like the work of James Churchward, who wrote all the material on Mu as the motherland, that even Atlantis was preceded by a mother culture, um, and that he calls it Mu. And whatever you want to call it, there was very advanced culture, civilization, and life going on. And, it was these prior times, or Zep-Tepe. This is when the rebel angels were ruling, or what we call the feathered serpent, the reptilian depictions, the dragon-like depictions of the Anunnaki, that they were here and they had high technology and advancement prior to the advent of modern humanity. All this I cover in my 6th book, Sons of God. Anyways, real quick, I do want to remind the listeners and those of you that frequent this show as well as others that we do need your monetary support in order to continue with the broadcasts and the way we do, with all the various hosts that dedicate their time and their efforts in order to bring such esoteric truths as what we're speaking about this evening. That if you can, certainly don't put yourself out if you cannot afford to. Feed your families and yourself, take care of your bills, do all those things, keep a foot in both worlds. But if you do have some discretionary spending, what better way to use it than in support of the network? Purchase access to the archives, download all of the broadcasts from all the various hosts. Your favorite ones, and those you may not even had chance or opportunity to listen to, that may come on at times when you are not able to gain access to the internet or to listen live. And it's a great way to support the station, that it's only $4.95 a month, and that you can download in MP3 form all of the shows going all the way back to the beginning of last year. And so we thank you for all the effort that you put forth in supporting us in the ways that you do. We absolutely love you and would be nothing without you. That it takes the interaction, the dialogue that we share with you to make this success. And so thank each and every one of you. All right, I did post a link in the chat room to a video that you can find on YouTube that is talking about. I can see there's a lot of interest in this topic, and I'm going to share some more information. Like, I'm even going to share some excerpts from a text, that I spoke about that was sent to me by one of my listeners, the book of Atam and Eua, which is interesting because everybody believes or considers the Bible to be based upon Sumerian teachings, that even with the story of Noah's flood, that it was based on the stories of the deluge that were found in the cuneiform text and all the library that was discovered there at Babylon or somewhere in Iraq. But what this particular text shows, which again, it precedes the Sumerian by 2 millennia, 2,000 years, and that the Thracians were what you might consider to be ancient Christians, or they were knowers of Christ, and they knew that he would come into the flesh, that this particular book has a prophecy of his coming into the flesh, and even talks about how he would die and that he would be resurrected to life. All those things are found in this particular text. I've done a 5-part series on this information because so many people are interested in it, and I'm trying to bring it to the public in its fullness because there is so much interest. And so I'm going to post a link to my other broadcast. It's on blogtalkradio.com/Fallen Angels TV. If you just scroll through the archives, you'll see that over the past 2 months, I've done 5 broadcasts on this particular text that I'm going to be quoting from in what will be the final segment of this 2-hour show. But before I get into that text, I want to read just a little bit from that text that I put, that I linked into the chat room. You're welcome, Hemp. It's from the Thracian script Decoded by Dr. Stephen Guide, and he is the one that discovered this text and translated into Bulgarian. And my friend Alexander translated from the Bulgarian into English, and this is the text that he provided to me, which you cannot find it anywhere on the internet. Nobody else has a copy of it besides him and I. And this is the text that I read from in these series of shows. And I'm actually going to publish it as a supplement to and include it in my next book, which will be on the war in heavens, the end of days, and the destroyer, which I'm working on now. And I should have it done by the spring, hopefully. And so I'm going to read just a little bit from this text from Dr. Stephen Guide about how this information came to light, how he was able to translate the Thracian text, and what this means for the world. And I'm not going to read a lot, so we'll have a lot of time to focus on the actual text that was sent to me, the book of Atam and Eua. This is definitely not just another attempt at decoding the plates from Gradashnita, 5th millennium BCE, and Kara Nova, 4th millennium BCE. This book makes all the difference compared to all previous decades of works, presenting various already discarded suggestions, interpretations, and presumptions, and on and on and on. All failed attempts at decoding any of the engraved signs upon the plates, or even making informed guesses about their meaning. For the first time ever, in the scientific discourse laid out in this book, you will find the complete and final scientific decoding of each and every one of the pictographic signs upon both tablets, and the consequential results are, the least to say, unprecedented and sensational. What is especially unique about the reading of this prehistoric text from these particular plates is the elegant research methodology used by the author to display literally before the eyes of his audience all the linguistic detail and artistry leading to the undisprovable and direct conclusions from the accurate and final analysis of the hieroglyphic pictograms and their full meaning rendering. Some of the deciphered words in the text mention the name of Thrace and the territory of Thrace since around 7,000 years ago, as well as the evidence for well-defined Thracian Orphic themes since around 6,000 years ago, are bound to turn at least a few scientific heads. This is so exactly because until now, no one had dared to conceive that the Thracians could have been the autocontatus, whatever that means, originally native population in those parts of the Balkans since such ancient times, especially because all classical Greek chronicles related the name of their ethnicity to the period of the Bronze Age, which was about a couple of millennia later. What's most astounding yet is the fact that the Thracian pictographic script, now decoded, was found on artifacts namely the two plates above, which are of such antiquity that it is now considered conclusively to be the first and oldest script ever known to mankind, predating the written artifacts from Sumer and Egypt by some extra 2 millennia. Of course, this is only post-flood, that the deluge wiped out, even older cultures and civilizations, of which the Thracians are, their legacy. They are the inheritors of the Atlantean as well as the the mother cultures, which preceded them. They didn't just pop out of nowhere and suddenly have all this knowledge and technology and advancement. It came from somewhere. On top of that, now it becomes evidence that it was first developed and used by the Thracians, who have been labeled by historians for far too long as a people of no letters. It is worth mentioning the fact that these people of no letters evidently made use of this most ancient pre-hieroglyphic script for at least a millennia, since the hieroglyphs identified on the plate from Gradishnita, 5th millennium BCE, and the ones identified on the plate from Kara Nova, which date back to the 4th millennium BCE, have been found to be of the same type of pictographic writing. Therefore, it is very likely that a number of other findings from the same period, which have so far been defined as decorative artifacts, may also turn out to be literary documents written in the same Thracian script. It will become clear from the discourse in this book that this particular script represents a special type of pre-hieroglyphic writing, identical in character and similar in style to its later counterpart, and possibly direct descendant, which we all know as the Egyptian hieroglyphic writings, famous for style and beauty from its pyramid texts and specimens of a legendary epoch, notably over 2 millennia younger than that of the Thracian. All right, I'm going to only read just a little bit more. Some experts in the field may actually be so unprepared for a surprise of this magnitude that they may wish the plates were a fake, specially fabricated by an interested party. But luckily, however, the plates from Gradishnita and Kara Nova are not a new or recent discovery, but have been around for several decades and have been thoroughly tested by experts for their genuineness, as well as accurate datings have been certified. There have been hints and doubts about the possibility of identifying early pre-writing patterns upon them on numerous previous occasions. However, none such have been agreeably identified or decoded until this present and final success. Analysis by authoritative sources have been done in the past, searching for similarities between the signs on the plates and other already known ancient scripts like Linear A, while the findings of others categorically rejected any notion that the signs represented a writing system at all, since they could not identify patterns of repetitiveness in the engravings, which could be the hallmark of any known linear writing system. Notwithstanding their differences of opinion about the nature of the artifacts themselves, however, most writers have agreed that if a type of writing was to be indeed identified on the above named plates, this could bring about a dramatic shift in our modern understanding of the ancient world. Well, mine is the privilege to announce that in the course of my present research, the ancient Thracian script has now been finally decoded, and the results are unprecedented and sensational. All right, I'm going to stop there. I did give you the link to find this particular text. and to also download it for yourself. You can read it. It's 50 pages, and he actually, in the very next part, he breaks down how it was that he decoded and deciphered the Thracian text by utilizing the Egyptian hieroglyphic text. And he tells you which exactly he used in order to do so. And he gives you a comparison of the Thracian script with that of the Egyptian hieroglyphics. And in that way, much like with the Rosetta Stone, he was able to use various already translated languages in order to break the code and bring to light other more ancient scripts, and of which the Egyptian hieroglyphics were based upon. And so, Patrick English is talking about the Orpheus of Greek mythology and the story of how, he was able to lead his wife out of Hades, and how Hades actually, or Pluto, actually let him go because he was so enchanted by his music. And whether this is the Orpheus of that particular mythology, who was the first Thracian priest king, I have no idea. But his name is Orpheus, or Orfei the First. All right, so now I'm going to tell you about this particular text, and I'm actually going to share with you some excerpts. But before I do so, I'm going to read the background on this text that was sent to me. It's called the Book of Atam and Eua. It was written by a Thracian king named Sitarih, Sitarih. He's also known as Sitalkes or Sitalk, Sitalkes or Sitalk. He lived during from 431, or maybe he reigned from 431 to 424 BC. And it was his writing based upon this oracle, Orpheus, that he wrote down and provided this particular text. And it dates back again, as I said, to 5500 BC. It says this: translated by my friend Alexander Kwanznik from Bulgarian into English. King Sitalkes was a Thracian king who ruled in Thrace in the 5th century BC, who borrowed information from the books of the Thracian priest Orpheus, accordingly to the ancient oral tradition from deep antiquity, leading to a time of around 5500 BC. Parts of the text in this book were later adopted into other religious books. According to Dr. Guide, which you know this, the Thracians spoke the initial and the most archaic Thraco-Boharic dialect, which on the other hand was, according to Thracians themselves, the language of God and the first human language. There are at least 5 different versions of rewritings, among other written in Boharic, Scythian, Ethiopian, and later in Arabic. This published text about Adam and Eve contains the most information about them, which is missing in most other later variations and hidden from the public for some reason. Now, it's my opinion that not only is this text not been made or revealed to the public, and that information about the Thracians themselves has been kept hidden and kept secret, and that they're doing everything they can to prevent even knowledge that the Thracians were a very civilized people, and that they were the first among the post flood post-deluge period to establish themselves. Uh, in my opinion, it's done just as the reasons for hiding the information about the giants and about the, um, even the Atlanteans and all those mother cultures that are linked to the olden times. That all of this is hidden from the public because it doesn't fall in line with evolution, or that we somehow evolved of apes. In fact, it's the complete opposite. It actually shows that the oldest cultures, the oldest civilizations, were far in advance of even modern humanity right now, and that they had capacities which greatly um, greatly outvied even our own, and that we as a culture and as a people have been breaking down in advancement since the earliest times. And as the book of Enoch shows to us, the rebel angels were here before us, and they brought with them the mysteries of the heavens, the knowledge and the mysteries of the heavens. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back, everybody, for final segment. Following, just so you know, Vinny Eastwood is going to be on with Santos Bonacci and Jordan Maxwell here on Studio B, which that should be an interesting show. But anyways, so I posted a link to the Thracian script, Decoded. You can find it there in the chat room. You can download the PDF for yourself, or you can read it online. But as I said, it's an interesting text. And it's the actual electronic copy of this particular that I'm talking about, where Dr. Skeven Guide translated the Thracian script from the Egyptian hieroglyphics and found that it was much older, and that this information has been hidden and has been, kept away from us, so that we don't really know about our ancient past. And so, Hurlborn, you were asking me about this particular text that I was referencing, so you can find it there in the chat room. And also, for those that may come and listen to this in the archives or hear it later when it's posted to YouTube, or you've listened to it somewhere else, you can just contact me at zengarcia.com and email me through that website. If you're interested in any of the books that I've done, all of them are available there as well. My first two are sold out, but my third book, A Different Way of Being, my fourth book, Lucifer, Father of Cain, which I have a new edition out now, and has 50 more pages of information confirming the whole premise of that book. My fifth book, Awaken to the New World Order. My sixth book, Sons of God, Who We Are and Why We're Here, which covers all of this information. My seventh book, Skyfall, The Angels of Destiny. And my eighth book, which is based on the Targums, or the Aramaic translations of the original Hebrew Torah, that you can contact me for any of those. And so you'll be able to, and if you're interested in purchasing any of those, I'll be glad to bundle them together for you, autograph them, and give you a discount and ship them to you. You can have me personalize them to somebody else, your loved one or family member, and I can autograph them in that way. But anyways, all of the information that we're talking about now is found in my book specific, my sixth one. But for those that come later in the archives, if you want the link or are trying to find information on what I'm talking about here, just contact me at zengarcia.com and I'll be glad to get you the particulars so that you can follow up and do further research on all of these things that we're talking about here. All right, so now we're going to go to the actual text, and I'm going to read some excerpts because there's some very interesting things that are found within this particular text. And of course, I'm not going to be able to read it all because even after 5 90-minute shows, I've only made it to chapter 50. And this particular text, the book of Adam and Eua, let me go down to the very end. It has 68 chapters. So it's quite a bit of information. And there are things within this text that you won't find anywhere else. And as I said, it's knowledge. The whole book is about when Adam and Eve are kicked out of paradise. Like the whole Genesis account, it begins with the creation of the heavens and the earth, and then talks about the creation of humanity, Adam, modern humanity, how they were placed in paradise, how they were beguiled, and how they fell from grace and lost their immortality, their bright natures, and ended up being banished here to the earth. Another interesting thing is that it depicts the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Well, first, it speaks of the Nakash. For those of you that are familiar with the biblical text, it speaks of the Nakash, which is the serpent of Genesis 3. It speaks of this being as being the winged serpent and guardian of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, which I thought that was absolutely fascinating. And it is what led me to study what the Nakash was as the shining one, as an enchanter, as a magician, as an upright serpent type being. In this case, a winged serpent, which of course is a representation of a dragon, and that and that the worship of the feathered serpent worldwide is also connected to the beguilement of Eve and her impregnation with the first hybrid, the first son of the devil or scion of the devil, Cain, who was a direct descendant, a physical progeny of this particular being. And that's why we have the enmity between the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent, and how all that ties together and is linked to the enmity between the two the wheat and the tares, or the goat and the sheep, as depicted by the biblical text. I'm gonna read the first few sentences just to give you an idea. Also, you have to know that I'm helping my friend translate this into English that would read correctly, for those that English is their first language. Right now, it doesn't always do that. And there are some corrections that have yet to be made. And so if it reads funny, you'll understand why. That Bulgarian is my friend's first language and English is his second. And so that's where, my help is coming into the picture as far as this text. And again, I did post a link. Let me go ahead and do that real quick. For those that may be interested in hearing the first 5 parts of this series based on this book of Atam and Eua, you can find it here at this link. This is my other broadcast that I do every Saturday, 5 to 6:30 p.m. And so in the past 2 months I've done 5 shows on this material. All right, I'm going to go ahead and read from the excerpt. It says this: In the beginning there was nothing whatsoever. There was only one, and there was nothing that the one could have, except for everything that he had inside of him, because he was everything. There was not time, no place, and no sound. There was not a single ray. There was nothing but the one, and the one did not even have a name, because nobody ever called him by his name, since there was nobody who could call him by his name. And there was no language in which he could ever be called, neither the sound in which his name could be called upon, nor was there an image with which he could appear. And from this one everything is, and everything was made, because he wished it to happen. And when he wished, there was nobody he could give it to, and there was nobody who could fulfill his wish, because the wish was love, and there was not yet an object to this love. For the humans, it was not allowed to know about all these worlds, but if there would be anybody worth the slaughtered lamb from the day of the creation of the world, whose name is Isus, will be allowed to learn about the worlds one after another, till they will know them all, as he, the God himself, became known, and will live together with Isus for eternity in the bosom of the Father and in the womb of the Holy Mother Spirit, Rhea. All right, and that passage kind of relates to John chapter 1, verse 1 through 5, which speaks about, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. That particular text. All right, now this is about the portal, the tree. And it's interesting because, again, it speaks of the Nakash as a winged serpent, a feathered serpent, which we know that the most ancient religions or pagan religions are based on the worship of the feathered serpent. The tree looked at her in a way that she became speechless. She went to the tree to stroke its polished surface. It was soft, loving, and pleasant to touch it with the skin. She was wondering from where the tree was watching her, because she felt it. She looked up at the branches and saw a big bird, beautiful and shining, with strong and beautiful teeth and fiery eyes. The bird spoke to her. The tree is even more soft and sensitive than you think, and if you try its fruit, you will be like God. Yes, you will be goddess, and many will love you and will obey you and will submit to you like they submit to God. Come and look, its fruit is inside the tree, in the hollow space of its trunk. Come and see how sweet its fruit is. Eua was alarmed by this talking creature, but remembered what Adam told her, that this tree belongs only to God, and that God ordered not to come near it, because this tree brings pain and can cause even death. But Eua did not know what death is, and this slight pain that she felt when she touched the tree with her skin was pleasurable and made her passionate. That is why she asked, I have not seen you before. Who are you, and how do you know that the tree makes God what he is? And the creature whispered to her with a soft voice, I am the flying snake and guardian of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. That is why I know this tree well, and you are Eua, Adam's woman, who does not have much time for you, because he does important things with God. Come so we can play and amuse ourselves inside the tree. It is very comfortable. Touch it again and come and try its soft fruit, which is in the hollow space. And then Ua backed up a bit and said, maybe this is the truth, that I will die if God sees me, and then he will punish me. That is why he put you as a guardian of this tree, right? Then you will be the first to betray me and to reveal me. All right, let me check the chat room real quick, because I know there was a lot of interesting commentary going on in there. And so you see that from this text, and it was the first thing that led me into studying what and to link the Nakash with the worship of the feathered serpent, and also to the seraphim angels, which, if you don't know, think about the two words for seraphim. Sarah is snake or serpent, and Rephaim is giant. So this is the seraphim angels are giant serpent-like beings. And because we know that they're winged serpent, feathered serpent, angelic serpents, that's where we get the whole mythology surrounding the dragons that brought to earth, like in Japan and in China, they're worshipped. Oh no, Dreamweaver says many of your shows have just disappeared from YouTube. Oh great. That's been happening a lot of late. I don't know why, but I'll look into it a little bit later. But anyways, so the whole connection with the Nakash of Genesis chapter 3, which he's named in the Targums as Samael, the angel of death, which we know is just another name for Satan, and that in the Gnostic text, it also refers to Yaldabaoth, or the demiurge, the ruler of the visible world. His three names are Yaldabaoth, Saklos, which means the blind god or the foolish god, and Samael, the angel of death. And so all of these things are connected to what we speak about as the feathered serpent. And so all these things connect together. And that is another reason why I think this text is so relevant and so important. And if you take the time to listen to the series that I've done on it, you'll find that it's a fascinating text, and it covers from the fall of paradise, their transition in the flesh, the beguilement of Eve, everything. It's just a truly fascinating text. And so I'm going to continue reading while I can some excerpts from this text just to kind of pique your interest for it. The next particular part is about the tree being a portal, almost like a stargate, and that when they enter it, they're not able to find their way out because they fall from paradise and end up being banished to the wilderness of the earth in a place called the Cave of Treasures. It says this: "It is time to go out from the trees," said Atam. Eua replied, "I want more. Why are you in a hurry? God may look for us. I don't want him to find us here, especially when we are naked." Eua asked, "By the way, where are our clothes?" Atam answered, "Maybe we have left them outside the tree. Come, let's go to get them." And both tried to come out from the hollow place of the tree. They looked around but could not find the way out. They were scared. They could not understand why this was happening, knowing that they entered the tree and that there was an entrance. Where was it now? "Because the entrance to the tree is here where the garden is, very close to you, but being from your side, the distance is so..." Oh, this is what the Word of God, which, is Christ, he speaks to them many times, and he tells them why they are to be punished. And he's also the one that spoke to them, telling them to not eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And so Christ was there at the very beginning. He's even the one that banishes Adam and Eve from paradise. And so this gives you a whole nother, uh, as far as, perspective on Christ as God's word, and gives you the information of how he has been interacting with humanity since, the exile and the banishment from the kingdom of the first man and woman, Atam and Eua, in this case. And he also raises them from death when they're persecuted by Satan on the wilderness of the earth, or what is the Garden of Eden, and where they are forced to live in the cave of treasures. And all of that is part of this text here. But let me just continue reading because we're going to run out of time. He says this, because the entrance to the tree is here where the garden is, very close to you, but being from your side, the distance is so huge that you would not be able to pass it on your feet. Neither can you see it. The time and the distances are different on both sides of this tree. And when you soon will see the light where the sun rises and goes down every day, you will be able to see with your own eyes and be convinced that you are not in some tight tree, but are in fact in a big cave, and around the cave a vast land. If you decide to go to the west and the north or to the south, you will need your whole life to do so, and you would be lost on the earth. And so the tree became a portal, and it placed them in the cave of treasures here upon the earth, because they lost, when they were beguiled, they lost their immortality, they lost their bright natures, they were transformed into flesh being, and they lost their angelic nature and also their extra sensory abilities. It says this, they are unworthy before my law, which all creatures have to respect, the law that upholds the balance and the truth in the universe. The offense has to be punished. The punishment has started automatically by the written law, and now they are thrown out from the garden of my paradise. And outside the garden, inevitable death will come upon them, of which they have been warned. One final comment. Oh, my dear children, Satan has cheated you. This snake, which is the enemy of the human race, I cry for you because you have not understood that you will leave my garden forever and there is no way back. You see, now you see things with other eyes and hear things with other ears, and you feel with different parts of the body. You lost the clothing of your great and strong bodies that you had here in my garden, where your nature was divine and upraised. And now you are in the dark, and your eyes are not used to earth and darkness, nor your bodies used to it. Your fascination and satisfaction of your new world was short-lived. And now, as you wished, you will not only learn about the good and the pleasurable, but also about the bad and the pain and the suffering. Because the world outside the garden, the world to which you will go now, is vicious and rough, an earth which will give you weeds and thorns, and you will sweat when you must cultivate it in order to get food. All right, we're going to stop there because we're running out of time, but I hope that it was of interest to you, and I thank all of you for taking the time to join me and to listen to the show. Bless you in this new year and the new opportunity. God bless all. Good night.